Hello again, friends. This is Sharon from Mad Paper Crush. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to do part 2 of my series Working with Digitals. Now, if you haven't seen part 1, the link is in the description box below. And in that video, we talked about printing your digitals, prepping them for putting into your journals, and also adding paper to them. So in this video, we're going to be talking about fabric, fibers, and dimension. So you'll probably notice that some of the techniques in using fabric are similar to what we did with adding paper, but because obviously of the texture of fabric, it's going to give a different look. Now I will say that using the two different types together, so using paper and fabric together with your techniques, really adds a nice touch. So let's go ahead and get started on working with digitals. And one quick note, these videos are in no way intended to be exhaustive. There are so many different things that you can do with your digitals that I'm sure I haven't even thought of. So I'm just hoping that this series will get your creative juices flowing and inspire you to use your digitals over and over again in different ways and to create your very own pieces of ephemera to go into your journals that are uniquely you. So let's get started. So the first thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was stitching. And we did talk about this in the first video a little bit, but I wanted to just expand on it a bit and give you some different ideas and some thoughts around stitching. So as you can see here on my table, I have two different cards. Now, they're very similar. They're not the same card, but I wanted to show you the difference that just adding stitching can make. So this card obviously has been prepped and it's ready to go, but it has no stitching. So, and it's lovely. You know, the digital is very pretty, and this would make a perfect journal card inside of a journal. But I just wanted to show you what just a little bit of stitching can do to really make a difference. So you can see here, even this thread, which is very light on this light background, it really makes a big difference in the digital. So I wanted to encourage you to use stitching throughout your projects to just add a little bit of texture and dimension to your digitals. And the other thing that I wanted to say is leaving your threads long. I came from a sewing background. My mom taught me to sew when I was little, and I was always taught to, cut my threads off. Once you make your knot, you cut your threads off. But in junk journaling, I love to have these threads hanging and just creating more texture throughout the book. So I hope that you'll do that with yours as well if you would like to create a shabby look. You can certainly cut them off if you're looking for something a little more clean. Let's talk about the different kinds of stitching. I know that sometimes I get stuck in a rut and end up doing the same stitch on my digitals over and over again, but I think it's really important to remember that there's a wide variety of even just stitching that you can do to digitals to make them look different. So for example, this one just has a straight stitch all around the edge. So it's very simple, it's plain, but it just borders the digital, makes it stand out a little bit more. So you can always do straight stitching. And then with straight stitching, you can do like crazy stitching. So I've just stitched sort of a zigzaggy, not even a zigzaggy, more like of a wavy line around the border, and then gone around a second time, kind of in the opposite wave to give that this digital a border. So you can see, even just the difference between straight stitching, you can make it look very different. And then there is zigzag stitching, which is what I find myself doing most often for some reason. I don't know, I just like the way that it looks. But there's zigzag stitching that you can do all around, and if your sewing machine can, you can change the width of your stitching and you can change the stitch length. So you can make these stitches more compressed if you want to as well. I do have a short video on some tips for sewing paper, and I'll link that down below as well so that you can kind of see some of the options that you have for stitching these different stitches on your digitals. And with a zigzag, you can also do a zigzag stitch that kind of goes off of the paper. So if you have a needle that goes in one side of the paper, but then off of the paper, you sort of create a zigzag stitch that looks just kind of like little peaks on your digital. So you can see the difference here. Whoops, let me try this. So this one, both the needle hit the paper on both sides. And then for the one below, I had the needle go in the paper on one side and off on the other side. And it creates a very different look. So you can see the back, how that looks as well. But I kind of like this off the side stitching because of the way that it frames the digital there as well. Okay, and I have a very old sewing machine, but it does do a couple of decorative stitches. And this is one that it does, and I really like the way that it looks. So you can see the decorative stitch around there. I think it's very interesting. Mine maybe does 3 or 4 decorative stitches. It doesn't do a lot, but you can see the different looks that I can get even with a sewing machine that doesn't do that. Now I know that there are sewing machines out there right now that do a lot of different decorative stitches, and I've seen some really beautiful stitching on paper that just looks amazing. So if your sewing machine can do decorative stitches, I just encourage you to try them and see what they look like, because I think that they'll bring a lot to your digitals. But I also want to remind you that even if you don't have a sewing machine that can do all of that, you can really get a variety of different looks in your digitals by just using what you have. Okay, and the last thing I want to say about stitching is that it can definitely be used in combination with other techniques that we've talked about. So, for example, this one, I have stitching on fabric and on a digital on this postcard here. And then you can also just take strips of fabric or strips of ribbon or some other, different fabric or texture or something, and you can stitch it onto a digital that way. So this journaling card kind of becomes a tag when you use some fabric and stitch it on there. And then also you can use stitching for digital on digital. So this is a digital tab. So after I've cut it out, and ink it up, of course, because, that's what I do. And I can take this journaling card digital and I can stitch it right on here to, give this whole thing, these two digitals together, to really make them look a little bit different. So that's some ideas for stitching your digitals. So let's talk a minute about fabric washi. Fabric is another great way to add to your digitals to make them look different, or just to give them texture and color even. I did a video on how to create this frayed edge fabric washi. You can certainly make it with cut straight edges to make it look a little bit different if you would like to. I will link to that video in the description box below. And as you can see here, I have these strips of fabric washi that are all ready to go to be put onto something. And this is a way you can use fabric without stitching, but you will want to be careful if you do stitch through this, which you certainly can, but it may gum up your needle on your sewing machine. So just be careful if you sew through fabric washi or even through fabric that you've glued down that maybe isn't, quite dry. You want to be careful that you're not gumming up your needle on your sewing machine. But here's a sample of some fabric washi that I used just on a card and then put a digital label down on top and added some digitals to the side in collage. So it just sort of borders this label and gives it something a little bit extra. And then I wanted to show you, I'm working on a tag here that I have from my Shiver kit, and I'll link the kits that you see in this video down below. And this one I was thinking would be fun with something extra on it. Now I love the picture that's already on there with the purple flower and the gargoyle here, but I was thinking some fabric washi might look really great, and then maybe some wording over top of that. So I've already sewed the tag so that it's ready to go with some journaling spot on the back there. And then I'm just going to take my fabric washi, and hopefully this will remove fairly easy for me, which it did. And then I'm just going to place it down where I want it on the tag, and I'm going to try to put it very close to the edge so I get some of those frayed edges maybe sticking out over the sides. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this specimen label, which is also in the kit, and I've distressed everything already. So the sides are all ready to go. And I'm just going to put a little bit of this glitter glue on here and glue it down, woo, right side up. Yikes. Right in the middle there. And there we go. Now we've changed this one up a little bit and added a place to maybe put a date or, you know, just a special number in there. And this one's almost ready to go. It needs a topper, but I think that adds a lot to it. So another way to use fabric with your digitals is to start with fabric. So I have this just kind of a raggedy tag. So it's just some ripped fabric and it's been backed and all kind of sewn up so it's all together. And I think I want to try to use this owl on it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to fussy cut the owl out of the digital and put it on the tag there. Okay, now that I have him fussy cut out, I'm going to do a little bit of distressing around the edges. Just a little bit. I've been using black soot for this journal that I'm working on, and boy does it go on darker than I'm used to. Okay, I like that. And then once I glue this on, you can use the rest of this for collage or something like that if you would want to. And I was thinking maybe some stamps from the kit might be fun on this as well. Let me see if I can figure out a way to maybe make them kind of go with. No, I think they're too big actually. I think we're just going to leave it with this guy. Maybe I'll add a label. Okay, I think that'll do it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to use my glitter glue and I'm going to put on the label and the owl. Oops, right side up though. Now it just needs a little piece of ribbon or some string in there. And now I have a whole new tag. So besides fabric, there's lots of other textiles that you can use to add to your digitals to change them up a bit. So for instance here, I have just some decorative trim that I've just glued right on in kind of an empty spot in the digital just to change it up and make it a little more tactile. Then also you have lace. So all I've done here is taken just maybe a 3-inch piece of lace, looped it over the top of my tag and stitched it on for a nice tag topper there. So these are really easy ways to add some tactileness and some dimension to your digitals. So I just kind of wanted to show you a couple of other ones. So I have this little digital here of this picture of this woman. It's a cabinet card with a creepy moth over her mouth. And I have this little bit of black trim that I thought I would sew on here just to change it up a little, to give it a little bit of pop. So I'll show you that when we're done, but I think that that really adds a lot to even just this one little thing. I think it adds a lot to the digital there. And then this one, also an interesting picture of a wasp on some music page there. And I have another piece of lace, and I was thinking about just adding it as, just adding it as collage, just adding it in to make something different. But then I thought this one might be perfect to stitch on and create another little pocket so that when you have something in here, and of course I don't have anything right off the top of my hand here, but we can try this. So if you have something tucked in that pocket, the wasp is hidden, but when you pull it out, there he is. So I'm going to show you what that one would look like, and I think that that'll be an interesting addition to that digital. And then this one, I love this picture of this snake with the handwriting behind it, but I felt like it could use some color. So I have this little piece of red lace, and I think just adding that on would be a perfect addition to this digital. So let me go stitch those on or glue those on, and I'll come back and show you what they look like. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of show you the almost finished pieces. So they're not quite done. I don't have this one backed or anything yet, but you can see I glued the piece of trim on here, and I really think it makes that whole thing pop a little bit. And then the wasp that we did here, I did end up sewing the lace just on 3 sides so that you do have a nice little pocket there that you could slide something into to kind of hide your wasp, and then, you could pull it out, or you could even just put some little bits in there like tickets or something like that, just to kind of add to everything that's going on here on this card. And then the last one was the snake. And I went ahead and glued this down just on 3 sides. So you could actually slide something in here as well to have, this kind of card hold something else if you wanted to. But I really think even just the lace by itself really adds a lot, makes some of the reds come out from behind that snake there. And I also added in a little digital label there just to add some more balance to the whole card itself. And so there are some ideas of things that you can do with lace and trim to your digitals. Okay, let's talk for a minute about ribbon and string. There's so much that you can do with ribbon and string. I'm probably not even going to, take a bite out of all the different things you could do. But I wanted to give you at least some ideas to show you what's possible. So you can use ribbon and string as tab toppers. So we talked about using fabric and lace and trim as tab toppers, but you can always use string to make it sort of a traditional type tag. So this is just some twine there that is through an eyelet and creates a little tab topper for you. You can use seam binding to make a tab topper here. And this is just a punch that I have that's just like it's like a ribbon hole punch. So it's kind of long and thin, but it works great for seam binding. And I've just added a little dye to this, so some distress ink to this seam binding, and it creates a beautiful tab topper there. And then you can also use ribbon. So this is sari ribbon for the same thing, for a tab topper there. And I have a big eyelet there because this ribbon is pretty thick to get it through the hole there. But I love the chunkiness of this one, sort of compared to, the slim look of that one. So using different materials definitely gives you a different look throughout this as well. So the other thing that you can do is just use ribbon or string as decoration. So I have these two. This is just a journaling card, and I just took a scrap of sorry ribbon that I had and just stapled it right onto the corner there. But it just adds a little bit extra to this digital. And then this one, I tied a loose knot to some silk that I had, and I just stapled this on there, but you could certainly glue that on as well to kind of hold it on, and it really gives, you know, makes some movement and things like that onto the digital as well. And then I have this one that I wanted to work on to kind of give you an idea of something else you could do. You could certainly sew ribbon on. So I have this organdy ribbon that I thought would look nice, just kind of bunched up and sewn on to the side of this, just as complete decoration. So that's what I'm going to do, and I will bring that back when I'm done and show you what that looks like. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about is using string and ribbon as 3D features to your digitals. So for example, on this one, I just have some string hanging off the side, but it's in a knot. So I punched 2 holes in the digital, and I just threaded the string through and created a knot. And I love that, you know, it has sort of these ends that floop around on there. And then this one, I thought I would do something similar. I thought it would be cool to have like a little bow or something right above this label on this digital. So I'm going to show you how to do that one. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how to put a little 3D ribbon onto this one. I did not back this with my journaling pages yet because I didn't want the ribbon to go through, but you could certainly do that. That would be kind of a cool look just to have it come through, kind of like this one does. You could have that on the back of your card or your journaling spot. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to use my hand punch here, and I'm just going to create 2 little holes that are maybe a 1/2 inch apart from each other, maybe not quite that much. And you could certainly do this as big. You wouldn't want to get too small, obviously, because you wouldn't want them to, you know, end up pulling into each other when you're tying the ribbon. So I am going to just eyeball this. And there are my 2 holes. And you can see I didn't quite get them even, but with the ribbon in there, I think it'll be just fine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add eyelets. You could do this with a crocodile if you wanted to too, and you don't even need to add eyelets. So for this one, I didn't even add eyelets in, and I think it looks great that way as well. But this one, I'm going to put some eyelets in, and once again, I'm going to use my hand crimper. Okay, so my holes, my eyelets are all ready to go. And all I'm going to do is take this little, I think it's about, I don't know, it's not quite 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/8 of an inch about ribbon. And I'm just going to thread it through from the front to the back, and then from the back to the front. Until I have them about even. I'm going to make sure on the back side my ribbon is nice and flat. And then I'm just going to tie it in a little bow. And I may actually start by tying a double knot just to make sure it doesn't loosen up on me. And then I will tie my bow. Let's see if I can do this. I always forget which loop you start with if you want to have your ends even. And it seems like whatever way I choose, I always get it wrong. See, I've got it wrong. Let me see if I can do this again. Maybe that's because I tied the double knot. Well, that looks better. It's not perfect. I could probably go back and do this a little bit better. But for time's sake, oops. And I'm just trying to get it tight here. But then once I'm done, I will just trim this down. And then you have yourself a little bow on your tag there. And I love the way that looks. I am going to have to straighten that up because that'll drive me crazy. But I love the way that looks, that it's coming right out of the middle of the page there, and it adds some nice dimension to your tag. So let me go bring back this one, and we'll show you what that one looks like when it's all done. Okay, and this one is now done as well. And as you can see, I have the ribbon just kind of sewed right on this note card here. And I just kept folding it over and putting it under the presser foot so that it would give this nice messy look to it. So I love how that the white of the ribbon kind of brings out the white in the flowers that are here. And then I just left the ends long to kind of come over the, the top ends of the note card there. And so there you have it. That's ribbon and string ideas for putting them on your digitals. Okay, friends, that concludes part 2 of my Working with Digital series. I hope that these ideas have inspired you to do different things with your digitals and to create and recreate them in different ways. I also encourage you to use these ideas if you use your digitals for pockets or tuck spots on pages of your journal. If you have some of these techniques that you put on before you glue them down into your pages of your journal, I think that's a great idea as well. Now, I will have linked below a blog post that I'm doing that gives detail on all these different ideas, as well as showing you the before and after picture of some of the things that I showed you here. So I hope that you'll go check that out as well. If you subscribe to my channel, the next video, part 3, will be coming out next Friday. You can be notified when that video comes out. And if you like this video, I hope that you'll give it a thumbs up and join me next week as we work with more digitals. We'll be doing heavy metal next week, so that'll be fun. I hope that you'll join me then when we talk about that. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.